God calls us to awake in Him. How will He find us when He comes?
Awake and ready.
When He asks us to dedicate ourselves more perfectly, how will He find us?
Awake and ready.
There's joy in heaven.
There's joy in the heavens, a smile on the mountains, and melody sings everywhere. The flowers are all laughing to welcome the morning. Your soul is as free as the air. The flowers are all laughing to welcome the morning. Your soul is as free as the air. Leave home in the sunshine, dance through a meadow, or sit by a stream and just be. The lilt of the water will gather your worries and carry them down to the sea. The lilt of the water will gather your worries and carry them down to the sea. Men hunger for freedom, but don't see their dungeon is only the thought that they're bound. Desires are their shackles, the hope that tomorrow the doorway to joy will be found. Desires are their shackles, the hope that tomorrow the doorway to joy will be found. There's joy all around us, why wait till tomorrow? We've only this moment to live. A heaven within us is ours for the finding, a freedom no riches can give. A heaven within us is ours for the finding, a freedom no riches can give. There's joy in the heavens, a smile on the mountains, and melody sings everywhere. The flowers are all laughing to welcome the morning. Your soul is as free as the air. The flowers are all laughing to welcome the morning. Your soul is as free as the air. The flowers are all laughing to welcome the morning. Your soul is as free as the air.
Good morning. This week's reading from Rays of the One Light by Swami Kriyananda is number 27, Abiding in God. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. Yogananda often emphasized, more often to his disciples than to the general public, but also to everyone generally, for it was a universal teaching, the importance of attunement. For divine understanding cannot be created, it must be perceived. To the disciples, Yogananda spoke of the importance of attunement with the Guru. To others, he urged the importance of at least of attuning oneself to higher consciousness. Can an eagle rise without support from the sustaining air? Jesus Christ said in the Gospel of St. John, chapter 15, I am the vine, ye are the branches. He that abideth in me, and I in him, the same bringeth forth much fruit. For without me he can do nothing. If a man abide not in me, he is cast forth as a branch, and is withered. And men gather them and cast them into the fire, and they are burned. If ye abide in me, and my words abide in you, you shall ask what ye will, and it shall be done unto you. Herein is my Father glorified, that ye bear much fruit, so shall ye be my disciples. How can we abide in him? Jesus says, if my words abide in you. By words, he meant not only his spoken words, but his vibrations, his consciousness, of which the words are only an expression. We must abide by the teachings, but we must also absorb those teachings into ourselves, that they become our own experience. For disciples of this path, the more in their hearts they live consciously in the presence of the masters, the more they will find the divine presence living within them. And for all truth seekers, whether disciples or not, the more they live sustained inwardly by the awareness of God's presence, the higher they will find themselves soaring in wisdom and joy. For the Bhagavad Gita says in the 10th chapter, I am the source of everything. From me all creation emerges. Blessed with this realization, the wise, awe-stricken, adore me. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind.
Good morning. My name is Lorna, and this is my Swami Bharati. And we always have a lot of fun doing this together. Nice to be here this morning. So a little girl is watching her mother, who's a minister, and she sees her bowing her head and mumbling to herself before she gets up to give her talk. And later the little girl asks her mom why she does that. And her mom says, well, I'm praying to God to give me a good sermon. And the little girl says, oh, so why doesn't he? So I'll do my best. So this verse is always fun. You may not have noticed, if you came here a while, and if you're new, you probably haven't noticed. Yogananda always used the King James version of the Bible when he was quoting that scripture. And I don't know exactly why, but it's beautiful, and I've always loved the King James version. And I love the fact that Swami Kriyananda, who wrote these readings for us to share on Sundays, that he uses that as well. I love the words. The Whispers from Eternity book that Yogananda wrote in his poem, Prayer Demands, remind me a lot of the King James Version, because there's just such beautiful language and words that have such depth and such meaning. And that word abide is just not something that we hear all the time. It's an old English word, and it means to remain, to continue, to stay. And the word that's related to it that we know is abode. Welcome to my humble abode. Last week, I think it was, we sang the song God's Call Within, and there's a line in there where it's the song is supposed to be like Divine Mother talking to you, whispering within your soul, and it says, find my abode, which is within. Yogis talk a lot about going inside, finding that abode inside. And so Jesus here is telling us to abide in him, that there's the vine, there's the branches, and if we abide in that presence, if we find that abode within and we're able to abide in that presence, then wonderful things will happen. It's Yogananda talked about the word attunement, and it means the same thing. We're tuning ourselves to the same vibration. In choir, I sing in the choir. It was lovely this morning. Thank you all who sang, and we have another song for you later. And singing in the choir is all about attunement. It's not about singing a solo and just doing your own thing. You're working with a group, and you have to be in attunement with each other. And we work on it all the time, just constantly. I've been part of the choir for a long time. And it's still an effort to try to find that attunement with each other. In fact, on Monday night, when we were practicing that song that we just sang, I was the only soprano. Mary wasn't there at rehearsal. And so it really took a lot of concentration. I'm a pretty strong soprano, and I've been singing this music for a long time. I know it very well, but to sing by myself while there's other harmonies, other things going on, takes a lot of concentration. And so for that song, I did pretty well. And then, oddly enough, later when we were singing another song, and I had a couple other sopranos with me to help sing that one, could not find the part. Just kept trying and trying, and we'd restart the song over and over again, and until the sopranos, found that spot, found that attunement, and found that right place where we could sing it together. And it's just such a perfect metaphor for the path, because we just need to keep doing that. We need to keep coming back and finding that attunement. This morning, I was, I meditated and I did all the right things, and I was looking forward to coming and just felt in the flow. And then Mary and I got a little bit late, and things got a little bit rushed, and I got a little bit, and I come in and we're late to the practice. We always practice first before service. And I'm off, I can almost feel my just being off. And this just coming back, singing the song, looking at Master's face, Yogananda's face down there, come back to center, back to that attunement. It's not something we find and we do and then it's like smooth sailing. It's something that we have to work on over and over and over again. And there's a lot of ways to do it. There's a lot of ways of trying to find that attunement. If you're a disciple, as Swami said in the reading, if you're a disciple of Yogananda, of this path, we have a lot of ways to tune in to them, to bring back to center. If you're not, then you just, before you find a guru that you feel like you are trying to tune into, you try to tune into that higher consciousness. You just try to tune into anything that'll help lift you up. Because we're just bombarded all the time with a lot of other stuff that constantly is going to bring our magnetism down, bring our thoughts into other places. I work at Home Depot, and it's a really busy weekend. And yesterday, July 4th weekend, it was really insane. And there's just bodies and consciousness and things. I just sort of felt a little like a hockey puck, just kind of being knocked around. I couldn't finish one thing. I couldn't finish talking to one customer. I couldn't finish one task. I couldn't finish not one single thing got finished because the constant interruption. And I had the phone most of the day, and so I'm trying to talk to a customer, and then the phone would ring. And there was a point when I thought, this is insane. And if I didn't have this to tune into, to constantly lift my vision and my consciousness to a different place, I'd be crazy. I would be drooling up here, just crazy. Because it just, there's too much. It's just, and it's all the time. It's just relentless. And the only way I can do that is to work on trying to be in tune with my guru, trying to be in tune with a higher consciousness, so it feels, and when I'm successful at doing that, it feels more like, I'm skating, or I'm flowing through it. You still have to deal with all the details. You still have to deal with, all the stuff that comes up. But you have a higher level. That's what we talk about a lot, about soaring. Those words, and Swami uses that a lot in his music, the idea of soaring above, because you're soaring, you're able to soar through it, you're able to flow, and you have a totally different consciousness about it, because you're in tune with something that is a much larger reality than what's, just crashing and bumping around. And you have to find your own way of doing it. There's just thousands of different ways that you can continue to come back and to try to find that. Find what inspires you, find what helps you. Looking at the pictures of the gurus, having reminders all around you. Sister Gyanamata was Yogananda's foremost woman disciple. She was so in tune with him that they just telepathically shared thoughts. He traveled all over the United States on these campaigns, and she stayed back at Mount Washington and helped to keep an eye on the place and run the place while he was gone. And yet she was so in tune with him that she would actually know when he was going to speak and would feel his vibrations when he prayed for her, and would follow his schedule so that she knew where he was and would visualize where he was and what he was doing. And yet, at the same time, she also used reminders. He came to her room once and blessed her. And after he left, and from that time on, she put a vase of orange flowers in the spot where he stood to remind herself, he wore an orange robe, to remind herself that her master stood there. And yet, she didn't need that really on a conscious level, but she used it. She said, when she wrote to the nuns and gave them advice, she told them, do whatever it takes to make that devotion burn as a flame, burn brighter, whatever it takes. And that's what we have to do, and we have to keep finding those ways. I would encourage you to just find whatever means you can, inward, outward. The outward props and the outward reminders are really, really useful. I've sort of lived both ways. For years and years, I lived without any pictures of the masters on the wall. And I didn't even have a place to meditate in my home. And it was my own choice. It felt like the right thing to do at the time. And I really needed to build that inner awareness without the props in an outer way. But now I'm living in a place in the community, and also with, I just keep putting more up. I just keep putting pictures up, putting words up, colors, sights, playing the music, whatever it is, because it all helps. It all helps me because, like I said, I'm not strong enough to stand and be that connected all the time in the world with all of the influences that there are. I need the help. And so I encourage you to use whatever, like Gyanamata said, whatever you can. I even I'll have a confession. I have what's it called? A Wii Fit exercise program, a game that I started using a couple years ago when I decided I really needed to be more active. I walk like 10 miles a day at Home Depot now. I don't need the Wii Fit very much anymore. But I did, and it's fun. I think it's fun, and it was a way to have fun. So this little program, you have bicycling, and you have different activities to get you going and get you moving, and they have these little people in it that come with the program, so that when you're watching the TV and you're doing these things, and you're a little character in there, and you make things happen, but they have all these little people along with you, so you're not alone. And some of them come with the program, and some of them you can make yourself. There's a whole fun thing. When the kids were little, we've had this game for a while. When they were younger, they would go in and they will love making the little people rather than doing the game. So they would design. So I have little people that run around that look like little aliens and look like they're all these little people. Well, I decided I needed to have one that looked like Master. So I went in and made a little Yogananda people that I could have with me. So he has a little orange robe and has long dark hair. And you do your little exercises, and you do your little route like you're running or you're biking, and you come to the end and they all cheer you on. And it's random, it's programmed so that I don't know where he's going to show up, So then there's little Master. Oh, there's Master over there, and he's going, yay, Lorna, yay! And I love it. It just helps me in every way to feel that connection with my guru is there all the time. It never goes away. And it helps me to feel like I'm always back in tune. And I've gotten better at noticing when I'm not, like this morning. And so we gradually learn that place. As we experience that and we work on it, we gradually get to the point where we know when we're off, and it feels so much better when we're back in that place. And then in this reading, he talks about, Jesus talks about the fruit. If you do that, and you're in tune, if you're abiding in God and you're abiding in that presence, then there will be this abundance of fruit. Jesus, of course, lived at a time and was talking to people that were simple country people that farmed and depended on the land for their livelihood. So a lot of his metaphors, a lot of his references are to the land and to the harvest and to the vine, the branches, the fruit. These are things that the people there knew. And this morning, this is fun. This morning, I love this time of year because of the fruit, the fresh fruit. I can just live on the fruit. So I counted, I thought, how many different fruits? I had 8 different fruits sitting on my table this morning that I could choose from for breakfast. And then I was thinking about the talk, and I thought the fruit that Jesus is talking about is the manifestations of God, of the different ways when you are in that attunement, when you're in that flow, you will have fruit. You will have this experience of God's presence in your life, and it will manifest in a lot of different ways. How many manifestations are there? 8. There are 8. And I had 8 fruit there on my table this morning. And I could choose which one I wanted. And the same thing is true of the way that God manifests in our life. There are 8 manifestations, and then there are like gajillions of different ways within those 8 ways that God can show us that we're on the right track. We don't have to wait to die and go to heaven and get the reward. That's not what the yogis taught. This is an ongoing progression. In fact, Swami talked about, he says, to live in spirit means to grow in virtue and understanding. So it's a constant process. It's not good to get into measuring and trying to measure ourselves all the time. But it's wonderful to look at the fruit in your life, to look at what God is doing and how your awareness expands. See, the secret is God's presence is there all the time. It's only our awareness that needs to grow. God's presence doesn't grow. It doesn't change. We're the ones that change and expand our awareness so that we see that more clearly and that we're aware of it in every moment, more and more and more. It's really fun to just stretch your awareness and look for the fruit. If I'm trying to stay in tune with God, I'm doing my best to be sincere, I'm trying to find that place of flow and that divine awareness, where's the fruit? Where is it that God's showing up in my life? What is it that's happening that I can say, yes, that's because of my efforts. I can see that and it's happening. I can be aware of it happening because I'm more in tune. It's not happening as a reward or as a payback that we get back. It's happening all the time, and we just become more aware of it. And in the other part of that reading that I wanted to bring up is the whole part about burning the branches. That's the part people don't want to talk about. In a lot of Christian theology, this verse about I am the vine, ye are the branches, and if you abide in me, these good things will happen. And if you don't abide in me, you'll be cut off and burned like the branches are, which is a reference to how they, the actual process of getting a healthy vine, getting a healthy grapevine and cutting off the parts that were unhealthy and putting them aside. And a lot of, when you look at that and you try to read that in a literal sense and try to understand it, it's fairly understandable that people would then take that and say, oh, well, that's what would happen, burning hellfire for eternity if I'm not in line with this, if I'm not abiding in the presence of Christ. And yet, Yogananda doesn't teach that. None of the self-realization masters taught it. Jesus didn't teach it. That's not what he meant. He wasn't saying that therefore you know, it's over and you don't have a chance to be part of the vine anymore. We're always part of the vine. But that process of burning and purification is really interesting. I was thinking about that this morning. We do a purification service. A lot of you are here for the purification that we do every week before the festival service. And we, as yogis, crazy beings that we are, we actually go up and ask to be purified. We ask for that process because we know that purification process is going to help us get to where we want to go. We know that there's debris and there's stuff and there's consciousness and there's things in the way. We want to get there. We want to get to master. We want to get to that freedom. We want to get to that understanding and that awareness of God's presence all the time, not just little bits and pieces sometime. We want it all the time. And we know that we need help. We need help from the masters to do that. And we know that it's going to take some work. That's what purification is about. We use the fire here as a symbol of that light of God and the burning and the transformation of things into light. And so we actually purposely step forward and say, I seek purification by the grace of God. And that's what Jesus was talking about. If you're not ready to abide in me, it's going to be painful. And that's a process we've all been through, is that painful awareness that we're not where we want to be, that we're not connected in the way we want to be connected, that we're not abiding in that presence that we know is there. And so it hurts and it's painful. And so eventually we get to the point where we say, I want you. That's what I want. And it's going to take purification, it's going to take some work to get there, but that's what I want. Because I want the fruits. I want that joy. I want that bliss. I want that connection and that union and that freedom to soar above all the stuff that's happening down here. There's a song, sorry, water, suddenly. There's a song we're going to sing after. Thank you. The song is called Mother of Wisdom. And there's a line in there that it's a call, it's a prayer, call to Divine Mother to say, I'm turning towards you now. There's a line in there that says, so many years we've boasted but madness, and now our souls call thee. It's madness. We finally wake up to the realization that it's crazy. What we're doing is crazy. What we're doing of spinning on the wheel and getting knocked around like a hockey puck and living in that pain of separation and that delusion that's a reality, we finally start waking up and we say, that was madness. This is where I want to go. Now I'm going to turn towards you. And I'm going to make mistakes along the way. It's not going to be, one prayer and I'm there. But I don't want that madness anymore. I want that bliss. I want that joy. I want the love. In the Gita reading, the little short Bhagavad Gita reading at the end of at the reading we had, it says there's, what does it say? Oh, adore me. Those who are wise, meaning those who realize my presence and start abiding in my presence and understand what that is and understand that connection. Those who are wise are awe-stricken and adore me. And that's a very sweet reminder, not just that we're happier and that we find a level of joy and of understanding, but that, again, that word, I like that word, adore me. There's a chant that we have, adorable him. What's the name of the chant? Search him out in secret now, meaning inside. Search him out in secret now. And there's a little phrase, adorable him. And to adore, of course, means to just put all your energy, all your love, your adoration. It doesn't mean that in the Western mind, we have a tendency to think of adoration and all as sort of passive and sort of bowing at the feet of somebody, and just that there's no personal connection there, and I'm small and you're big, and there's actually more of a sense of separation. But what the Bhagavad Gita is reminding us is that once we have that wisdom, that understanding of who we are and what that source is, then that adoration comes naturally. It just flows out of us. And it's ever new. The definition that Master's given us, that all the Masters have given us about what that presence is ever existing, ever conscious, ever new joy. So it's not boring. It's not a place that we get where it's just the same. That's the wonderful thing about the spiritual path. It's what I love about coming to Sunday service and being here, is that it's always new. It's always evolving. It's a new experience every time, every moment. If you look at the saints, you look at the Masters, none of them were bored. They hadn't got to a place of being bored and having the same thing. It's an ever new experience of that divine awareness of God's presence. When you're abiding in that presence, then you are aware of how much that love and that light and that joy is present everywhere, in everything. And then everything you see, everything you do has that within it and behind it and sustaining it. So there's no separation anymore. And you still have to, as we all do, we still have to be in the world, we still have to do what we have to do, take care of our kids and go to our job and show up at Home Depot tomorrow, and everywhere we go. But behind that, if you're abiding in that presence, then you see it's like transparent. There's God. There's God behind it all the time. I want to read from Whispers for you. Number 152. O divine teacher, train me to recognize the difference between my soul's lasting happiness and the passing pleasures of the senses. Keep my eyes open that I may not be deceived by my senses, decked out as they are in stolen royal trappings, and in the mirage cloak of false happiness, as thus disguised they try to enter the mansion of my life. Discipline my unwise, wayward senses, that my pleasures be spiritualized, that I look ever beyond the illusion of glittering visible forms, to find divine joy hidden, simply dressed in the right robe of humility. Om. Amen. We're going to have another beautiful song for you.
Grant us thy peace. Hallelujah.